Y ya mi última pregunta, ya mía propia. Dime tú, ¿qué dos Vengadores te gustaría tener como compañeros de equipo?
Pues la verdad es que para mí, más que los Vengadores, es Midnight Suns.
Sí.
Imagínate,
Oh, tú sabes,
imagínate
tú
con Midnight
sabes.
Suns, con Punisher, con
Yeah.
Ghost Rider y Daredevil, Blade.
Mm, mm.
Creo que ese sería un grupo muy
Qué
interesante.
guay, qué guay. Esto.
For those of you who don't speak Spanish, I've translated this interview of Oscar Isaac talking about Moon Knight and getting a final question that has an extremely interesting answer. As you read on the subtitles or heard if you speak Spanish, he dodged a question about which Avengers he'd like to work with and answered saying he's more interested in working with the Midnight Suns. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Cosmic Culture, the channel where we talk all major movie and television news, theories, breakdowns, and much, much more. I'm your host Chris, and this is an extremely interesting video where you're given the option to work with Avengers and you've taken it upon yourself to name a completely different team altogether. I think there is a lot of hidden context here and we're going to dive into all of it, but consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already and turn on that notification bell. We have watch parties for Moon Knight coming up and we will be doing them live every night a new episode is released, so get ready for a ton of fun as we prepare for the release of Moon Knight. But with that being said, Oscar Isaac obviously plays Moon Knight in this new series. It's one of the first supernatural Marvel projects happening within the MCU. And although we know Blade is coming, Black Knight is coming, and many other supernatural projects are on the horizon and in production, it's all led us to believe, or rather ask the question, will the Midnight Suns make an appearance? A group of supernatural characters, mostly anti-heroes and superheroes, who are set up to protect Earth from supernatural forces, from demons and other type of bad characters that are a little bit more on the darker side than maybe what you would see the Avengers fighting. Here's what exactly was said in this interview. The interviewer says, "My last question, and it is my own question," saying, "What two Avengers would you like to team up with?" And Oscar Isaac returns with an interesting answer, saying, "Well, for me, more than the Avengers, it's Midnight Suns. Imagine with Midnight Suns, Ghost Rider, Daredevil, Blade. I believe it is a very interesting group." Now, in the comics, Marvel Comics, the Midnight Suns came together in the early 1990s, and they've been a relatively popular and successful comic book run since then. The original core lineup of the Midnight Suns included Ghost Rider Danny Ketch, Doctor Strange, Morbius, Blade, and Johnny Blaze. But since then, many other characters have been included in this lineup, including Punisher and, yes, Moon Knight. So it is 100% possible, and I would even argue likely, that we could be seeing a Midnight Suns team forming in the works here with Disney Plus and possible new movies that will be headed to the big screen for the Marvel Studios' new lineup. However, what I want to talk about in specific is the reaction and the answer itself, because I don't want to say it's suspicious, but it is very specific. Generally, if you were to ask anybody who their two favorite Avengers they'd like to work with is, you'd get an answer. However, he completely dodges this question and says, well, for me, the Midnight Suns are more interesting. I have to say, my red flags are going way up. For me, this means that he has been working with Marvel and talking about the Midnight Suns. This is something that has been an open discussion that he is currently working on, and maybe he's supposed to be trying to generate awareness, or just because of how deeply he is into the topic, and the fact that maybe he knows he's going to be working with the Midnight Suns, he wants to get people very excited for them. In the comics, Moon Knight worked with both the Avengers and the Midnight Suns, so he's kind of an open option here. He can go whichever way he desires as a character. However, if Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, any type of director have come to Oscar Isaac and said, hey, this is the direction your character is going to be headed in the future of the MCU, or maybe we get some of these answers specifically in the first season of this Moon Knight series, he's going to have a little bit of information and knowledge about what the future of this character is going to be. And if they told him, hey, you're going to join the Midnight Suns, I would imagine the Moon Knight actor would dive deeply into what that means, or maybe he already knew and he's really excited. But to dodge a question of, hey, what two Avengers would you like to work with, and fill it in with, honestly, Midnight Suns is way cooler, for me, from my brain, from my gut, that is a huge tell that we should get ready for the Midnight Suns, probably pretty soon in the MCU. Now, although Moon Knight is one of the first supernatural projects to happen in the MCU, we have a ton coming, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is going to be opening up a whole new can of worms. By that I mean, with the Darkhold and traveling the multiverse, and something that has been described as a pretty much horror film, but not quite a horror film, has an opportunity to introduce a lot of characters or ideology that the Midnight Suns would certainly work with. There have been talks and rumors of the Scarlet Witch potentially being possessed by somebody who has a hold on her through the Darkhold, and her sending different type of demonic beings to attack America Chavez. On top of that, as we are actually navigating the multiverse, who knows what type of characters we're going to run into, what realms will be opened, and what eventually could lead to catastrophic consequences for the main MCU timeline. All of which would of course require a supernatural team fighting stopper to protect the Earth from whatever, whether it's multiversal or from the dark dimension type of creature, will be making its way to Earth. Don't forget also, he said here specific names: Ghost Rider, Daredevil, Blade. I would presume if he was to know the Midnight Suns were coming, maybe he would also have a little information as to who would be coming with the Midnight Suns. Daredevil has already been introduced into the MCU, and we've heard from Kevin Feige and from Charlie Cox, he's going to have a pretty well-known presence. He's going to be involved in She-Hulk, the Echo series, he'll be getting his own solo project, and maybe even more. Maybe even Midnight Suns. And then of course Blade was mentioned, who we've known for a while will be getting a movie reboot into the MCU, and a very exciting, cool inclusion there as well. This was when we really started talking about the supernatural side of the MCU, back in 2019 during San Diego Comic-Con, when Kevin Feige announced that Blade was on its way. Obviously, a ton of different delays has pushed the film back, but it's about time now that it will be coming out, whether in 2023 or 2024, and it's going to fit in very nicely with Moon Knight, Daredevil, and the potential Midnight Suns project that we will hopefully be getting. But he also mentions here Ghost Rider. Now, a Ghost Rider introduction has been heavily rumored for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And I know what you're saying, pretty much everybody has been rumored for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and you would be right. But there are certainly characters who have been rumored a little bit more, with a little bit more detail, potential actors' names thrown out there. And Ghost Rider is one of those characters. And if Oscar Isaac is sitting here throwing the name Ghost Rider out, well, maybe that's because in the back of his head he knows Ghost Rider is going to be joining him for the Midnight Suns. What I see here in this interview is an actor who is extremely excited moving forward for his new career in the MCU. And with the Moon Knight series just a few days away, it's time to get excited for what this might bring, whether it is a new Avenger or a new team completely with the Midnight Suns and Moon Knight potentially leading them or being involved in them. However, I'm very, very excited to see it come to fruition. Being myself a fan of the MCU's darker side, the supernatural stories, and especially the Midnight Suns, I'm extremely excited to see where this is going, and I hope that Oscar Isaac isn't being hopeful here and maybe sharing a little bit of personal information as to what we will see in the years to come. We've heard nothing but good reviews for Moon Knight thus far from the critics and journalists who were able to see it early. I will be seeing it on the 22nd at the red carpet premiere, and of course we'll be giving you guys a spoiler-free review before the first release on the 30th. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. If you found it helpful, useful, or interesting, consider subscribing and turning on that notification bell, and I'll see all of you in the next one right here on Cosmic Culture.